Why are you using bands? Those will grow your puny arms. How'd you get in my house anyway?
When our goal is building muscle, our first thought is that we need to focus on lifting heavy weights. That anything else just won't cut it. That resistance bands are just for rehab type movements. But that just isn't true. So if you don't have access to weights, or if you're training at home or even traveling and want to keep building muscle, you're not doomed. Just buy yourself a set of resistance bands. Especially if you're looking to build your arms, this can be a great tool to use for those isolation accessory lifts to end your workout. But before I dive into 3 amazing arm moves you can do with bands to build your biceps, triceps, and deltoids, I want to chat a bit about resistance bands and how they work. In this case, when I'm talking about resistance bands, I'm specifically talking about resistance tubing with handles or elastic tubing. It's actually interesting how little research is truly done on resistance bands and muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth. So much of the literature focuses on adding bands to weights instead of just comparing weights to bands on their own. And most of the studies done on muscle hypertrophy with resistance bands only addresses using them with special populations, specifically older adults. And those studies do show positive benefits to using bands to grow muscle. But the fact that so much of the focus with bands is on rehab exercises in older populations makes me wonder if this is part of the reason why they are so easily dismissed for muscle hypertrophy. Because bands can be used to address all 3 mechanisms that drive muscle growth. We can create more muscle tissue damage, which is what we think of as traditionally driving muscle growth, although new studies do call this into question. We can do this by really focusing on the eccentric portion of the exercise. Not only can we slow down, say, the lower down on a bicep curl, but bands apply pressure in this portion of the lift in a unique way. They create eccentric acceleration and try to pull you back down. You therefore have to fight against this force even harder to slow down the lift. And this can assist in muscle hypertrophy. We also have to remember that there are 2 other drivers of muscle growth we can use to our advantage that bands actually work perfectly to target: mechanical tension and metabolic stress. We can create more mechanical tension through progressing resistance, using heavier bands, or even by using lighter bands but while going to failure. So you can do more reps if the loads are light and still create more tension. Basically, to drive muscle growth, spending more time under tension is key. When a muscle contracts to lift a weight or resistance, the muscle fibers experience mechanical tension while they shorten to move the joint. And bands can be a great way to apply a lot of tension while the muscle is contracted. Bands can also help us drive muscle growth through creating metabolic stress. You know that pump or burn you feel building in the muscle? This occurs with metabolic stress. To use bands to drive growth, we can change up the range of motion we perform with the bands to keep the muscle under more constant tension. We can also perform moves that apply the most tension to the muscle when it's shortened. So what are 3 amazing moves you can do to utilize the 3 drivers of muscle growth while just working with bands? Exercise number 1, bicep iso alternating curls. With this move, you're not only going to create more time under tension, but you're going to use the bands to increase tension at the point where the muscle is strongest to create a better stimulus for muscle growth. Basically, your biceps will be saying to you, burn baby burn. To do bicep iso alternating curls, stand on a band and hold a handle in each hand with your palm facing away. Curl both handles up so that you're midway through the curl. Then holding one hand here, extend one arm fully down and out of the curl before curling it all the way up. Lower that hand back to midway through the curl, then switch sides. This isometric hold as you curl on the other side is a great way to increase that time under tension and apply more resistance to the muscle at its strongest point. Exercise number 2, alternating overhead band extensions. This move is a great way to work not only all 3 heads of the tricep, but also really target the long head because of your shoulder position. When a muscle is put in a slightly stretched position, it produces maximal force. And because the long head is the only one to cross the shoulder joint, this position can better isolate that head of the tricep. The tension on the band will also increase over the course of your extension to challenge the tricep. And holding at that end range again creates more time under tension. And on the way back through the eccentric portion of the move, you'll have to fight the eccentric acceleration of the band. Just make sure there is tension on the band even when your hands are back. To perform this move, set up holding a handle in each hand with the band anchored slightly above you and behind you. Stagger your stance and walk out so there's tension even when you're reaching back overhead. Very slightly hinge forward with your elbows bent. Then moving only at your elbows, extend your arms out. You want to focus on keeping your upper arms still so you really isolate the triceps in this movement. Then slowly bring one hand back overhead. You want this slightly extended range of motion going back over your head, overturning this into a skull crusher. Extend that arm back out, then switch sides. Exercise number 3, front to side raises. The front to side raise is a killer shoulder move, and you're going to want to rush through it. The key is not to let yourself. Start light over getting ego on the loads with this one so you can keep the move slow and controlled. To do the front to side raises, start standing on a band with a handle in each hand held down in front of your thighs. Your palms will be facing back towards your legs. Stand tall and slightly depress your shoulder blades, pulling them down towards your butt. Then perform a front raise, lifting your arms out in front of you to about shoulder height. Don't shrug as you raise your arms up. Holding at shoulder height, fly your arms open to the side. Keep them at shoulder height and even feel the backs of your shoulders working as you fly your arms open. Very briefly pause here, then bring your arms back in front of you and lower down. Don't rush this move or shrug your shoulders. Even if you don't have access to weights, you can build your arms by just using bands. Focus on progressing the moves through heavier resistances, volume when you don't have heavier resistances, more time under tension, and even changing up the range of motion. For a killer burner using these 3 moves, set a timer for descending intervals of work. Start with 45 seconds per move, then 30 seconds per move, and finally 15 seconds per move. Perform each move back to back without resting.
If you liked the video, make sure to like it, comment below if you have any questions, and subscribe. We're posting new videos each week.